Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome everyone to the February Council meeting, our first meeting of 2024. I declare the meeting open at 6:34 p.m. We acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands of the Kulin Nation. We offer our respect to the elders of these traditional lands and to them, to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people past and present. For the mobile phone, I kindly remind everyone to switch phone off or turn to the silent. The recording of meeting proceeding. I advise the gallery that this meeting is being recorded and will be available on Council's website. All care is taken to maintain your privacy. However, your presence might be recorded. In accordance with the Council governance rule, meeting may not be photographed, filmed, or recorded without the consent of the Chief Executive Officer. I advise that no request to record the meeting proceeding have been received.
That's correct.
Yep. Apologize and the virtual attendant. Councillor, are there any apologize for the meeting today? No. Yeah. Okay. As per Rule 72.3 of Council's governance rule, I wish to advise that Councillor Bernadette Thomas is attending this meeting remotely. Councillor Thomas, can you please confirm that you can hear and see the meeting?
Yes, I can. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Thomas. I can confirm that we can hear and see you as well. Councillor, are there any leave of absence? No, there's no request. We have 7 of us here today. Conflict of interest. In accordance with the Local Government Act 2020, I ask if any councillor have a conflict of interest in relation to any of the agenda item. Any conflict of interest? No. Okay. Now I move to the public question time. Before that, I suspend, could I have some suspend of a standing order to acknowledge the passing of 2 significant members in our community? Yeah. Okay, so Councillor Holkaker and Councillor Michael Clark. Could I have the 2 significant people were passed away is Mr. John Coxeter, a former member of the Victorian Legislative Council, and another person is Mrs. Francine Richard. So I will leave to the Councillor Ortega. Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. Sadly today we note the passing of 2 figures, I suppose, in our community who left quite an important mark, I think, on the type of community we are. In the first place, Council would like to note the passing of Gardab Francine Richards on Tuesday the 13th of February in Perth. Francine was an artist and respected local Aboriginal elder. She was born and raised on the West Kimberley coast in WA, and her people are the Ariol clan of the Bardi Jawi tribe. Francine was Maribyrnong Citizen of the Year 2014, and some of you probably better than me would recall that. She was a co-health Indigenous worker, organiser of Scattered Tribes Elders Group, and a passionate community and First Nations church activist. Francine and her husband Tony were behind the establishment of the first, and I think maybe the only Aboriginal church in the western suburbs and maybe even Victoria at one point, here in Footscray. I was fortunate enough to attend a couple of services at the Aboriginal Church on Gordon Street and witness the wonderful community and support that it brought to a number of Aboriginal families living in our city. Francine assisted numerous organisations in developing reconciliation plans, including the Western Region Community Healthcare, i.e. Co-Health, Maribyrnong Secondary College and our own Maribyrnong City Council. Her contribution will be remembered and hopefully continue to provide an example for our whole community. I'd also like to take this opportunity on behalf of Council to pay tribute to another figure who sadly passed away January this year. Likewise, she stamped her mark on the communities of the West. Joan Coxidge was a professional artist, which I remember especially for her drawings of green band buildings commissioned by the Builders Labourers Federation. Joan served as a board member of the Footscray Community Arts Centre from 1980 to 1998 and chair of that board from 1990 to 93, and also a board member of West Theatre from 1989 to 90. Joan joined the Australian Labor Party in 1967, a leading figure in the left wing of the Victorian ALP. She soon became involved with Save Our Sons movement, which opposed conscription for the Vietnam War. In 1971, along with 4 other members of the movement, she was imprisoned for anti-conscription activities. In 1979, Joan was one of the first 2 women, and in fact the first Labor woman elected to the Victorian Legislative Council, becoming the member for Melbourne Western Province and serving until 1992. While in Parliament, she produced the newsletter, which seems pertinent again today sometimes, Hard Facts for Hard Times, from her Footscray office. I personally came across Joan through her tireless efforts in international solidarity, opposing the dictatorship in Chile, defending the rights of the people in Palestine, and supporting the radical governments of Nicaragua and Cuba against US aggression. As a lifelong campaigner for social justice, Joan leaves a beautiful example behind for us all. Condolences to both of their families. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Anyone have Councillor Michael Clark?
Yeah, can I just say, firstly, I'd like to thank Councillor Hawkins for bringing the request for a suspension of standing orders for the 2 remarkable people. I can only speak to the passing of Joan Coxidge. The reality is, councillors, that Joan, working with Norm Gallagher, she was very close to Norm Gallagher, member of the Builders Labour's Federation. And when I had this conversation with Joan, she said, look, Michael, a lot of people are down on the BLF and will continue to be down on the BLF. But if it wasn't for the Builders Labour's Federation, if it wasn't for people like Jack Mundy, if it wasn't for people like Norm Gallagher, our building sites would not be as safe as they are today. And that is a reality. So Joan was part of that spearhead that looked at reforms that did one thing more than anything else. It brought the breadwinner home after they had finished work, as opposed to leaving the breadwinner at the work site, perhaps taken away by ambulance to a hospital, but worse, often worse, taken away to a morgue. These people made a significant change to the landscape of the building industry. Joan Coxidge should never be forgotten. I commend the condolences to you all of Joan Coxidge and her family, to her family. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Clark.
Resume.
Yeah, okay. Can I just confirm before, Councillor, that Councillor Hawkins put the motion and Councillor Clark second, is that correct?
That's
and
correct.
then we're all in favour.
Yes.
But thank you very much. Now, could I call for the Councillor to move the motion to resume standing order? Councillor Carter and Councillor Tran. So, okay, could I put the motion to the vote or declare the motion is carried? Thank you. Now we move on to into public question time for up to 15 minutes. I would like to take this opportunity to explain how the public question time will proceed. This is the only time question from the public will be accepted at this meeting. And how this public question time works. Members of the public are asked to submit their question prior to the commencement of the meeting. Any matter can be raised so long as it is according with the council governance rule. A maximum of 3 questions per person is permitted. As a chair, I will decide who answers the question. Public question time is limited to 15 minutes unless an extension of the public question time is resolved by council. So I will councillor for public question time. Is there any public question time?
Yes,
Ms.
Mayor, we have
No?
received 39 questions this evening. The first question is from Chris Evans, and Chris asks the following. On Tuesday, the 13th of February 2024, 6 high voltage transmission lines collapsed in a storm at Amenity near Geelong. These collapses cut power to 500,000 homes and disconnected the Loy Yang A power station from the grid. On Friday the 16th of February 2024, the Age newspaper reported that there were 13,000 such towers across Victoria. It also reported that some 8,000 towers would reach their 70-year use-by date within the next decade. On Saturday the 17th February 2024, the Age reported that AusNet had failed to properly prioritise maintenance along high voltage transmission lines. There are 4 high voltage transmission towers in Maribyrnong Township, shown in Melway Map 28 as T18 opposite 87 Chifley Drive, T19 behind 44 the Esplanade, T20 at 39 the Esplanade, and T21 at 10 Oakland Avenue. How many other such towers are there elsewhere in Maribyrnong? Would you like me to answer
respond
it?
to that?
At this point, I'm not aware of any further of those towers, but this would be a question certainly that we could ask AusNet, as the infrastructure isn't the responsibility of council.
Yep, thank you, Madam. So
The second question is, what has Maribyrnong City Council done to satisfy itself that all of these towers have been and are being properly maintained, and that AusNet will remove or replace the towers when or before they reach the 70 years of age? Just as, again, it is an AusNet responsibility, and obviously council's concerned for the safety of its residents, but we don't kind of have the risk auditing process for those towers. So we can certainly take that up with AusNet, Mayor, but it's not our responsibility.
Right, okay, thank
So
you.
you're-
Councillor
through the
Crawford.
Mayor, am I right in guessing that AusNet would be reporting to state government? Is
Yes.
that comes under their authority? Yeah, so
Yeah.
perhaps a question for a local MP.
Certainly.
Yeah,
Now, the third question from Chris Evans is, has the council considered undertaking a risk assessment involving a collapse scenario at T21, a scenario which would involve total tramway and traffic disruption on the intersection of Raleigh Road and Van Ness Avenue, likely damage to adjacent houses and commercial premises, and a massive loss of power to surrounding suburbs and the entire High Point precinct? I think we would certainly agree that would be worthwhile, but again, that would be something that AusNet would need to undertake, not the council.
so, okay.
So the
Now
next, I mean, we
question.
can certainly follow up with them, but we can't undertake that audit. The next question is Fendi Liwang asks the following question. While acknowledging the tragedy in Israel and Palestine, will council commit to not unilaterally cancel contracts with businesses that only have tenuous links to a country far beyond the reach of this level of government? During this cost of living crisis, Maribyrnong Council ratepayers must not bear the financial burden of contract breaches and a smaller pool of suppliers from which to draw upon. Israeli innovation and technology are embedded in many of the goods and services we need to address the climate emergency, improve future employability of our residents and livability in our area. If I could
Madam
respond,
Chair,
Mayor.
yeah.
Council officers are currently reviewing and determining the next steps in regard to this action from the notice of motion. A future report will be presented to Council once officers have completed their investigation into current contracts.
Okay, next question.
Then Samantha Meredith asked the following questions. What measures does the council plan to implement to address the lack of safe crossings and pathways on Whitehall Street, Hallenstein Street, Ward Street, Joseph Road, Nielsen Place, Whiteman Street and Hopkins Street? If I
Could
could
I-
respond, Mayor. Council officers have prepared a program of works to address traffic and safety issues in both the immediate and longer term. As the Joseph's Road precinct experiences growth and change with ongoing development activities, these treatments include, but are not limited to, pedestrian crossings, signage, and on-road painting and line marking. We'll continue to work closely with the Joseph Road Action Group and other stakeholders in the precinct to deliver remedial solutions, including those raised in your question. And We do have a report later tonight, Mayor, on a contract regarding Joseph's Road.
Thank you.
Second question, what steps is the council currently taking to address the safety concern for pedestrians in the Joseph Road precinct? The response, if I may, is that council is committed to enhancing the precinct with a range of improvements, including road upgrades, pedestrian paths, traffic signals, bike lanes, landscaping and drainage. To minimise disruptions, the current works program will be staged, starting from March, could be April this year, but we have a contract up to here tonight that's meant to start in March. Stage 1 involves reconstructing Joseph Road, expected to finish by late December 2024. Stage 2 will address drainage and footpaths on Hopkins Street. Liladia Park improvements are slated for completion by June this year, and Council continues to work with the Department of Transport and Planning and the local police to improve safety along Hopkins Street.
Okay.
And the
thank you.
third question is, are there plans to install traffic lights and pedestrian crossings at Hopkins Street and Hallenstein Street, as well as upgrade signals at Hopkins Street and Whitehall Street? Yes, council officers are working with the Department of Transport and Planning to progress design submissions and approvals for intersection upgrades at both Joseph's Road and the Hallenstein Street, Moreland Road, Hopkins Street intersections, and have met with the Department of Transport and Planning to discuss safety issues along Hopkins Street. I think our last meeting was on Monday this week. So we're continually doing that, and we are also advocating for the reduction of a speed limit to 40 kilometres per hour. These discussions have been positive and are progressing well.
Yep.
So we now have some questions from Ash Brown, who asks, the council bicycle strategy outlines major projects, protected bike lanes in brackets, to be built 2020 to 2025. By now, 6 major projects should be built or underway, from page 54. These projects would form a basic network, making cycling in the city less dangerous and therefore enabling greater numbers of people to feel comfortable to ride. None of these projects are built or being constructed. How does the council plan to break the current deadlock in getting major projects built so it can recover the schedule, complete the bicycle strategy as planned within the 10-year period?
Would you like to answer that? Or do you
I
want
might
to
ask the Director through you
Yep,
of
thank you.
Infrastructure.
The
to answer
Pat,
that one.
Jeff, would you please answer that question? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Council's bicycle strategy was prepared in 2019 with feedback incorporated in consultation in late 2019. The onset of the COVID-19 pandemic started in March 2020 and the final bicycle strategy was adopted in May 2020. The COVID-19 pandemic significantly impacted the City of Maribyrnong, altering commuting patterns, finances and priorities for project delivery. In the face of these challenges, Council remains steadfast in transforming our city into a safe, cycle-friendly municipality. At the 17th of October 2023 Council meeting, Council resolved to request officers to progress the review and update of Council's integrated transport strategy. This approach signals a strategic review to ensure that our cycling infrastructure enhancements are not viewed in isolation, but considered as part of a comprehensive plan to improve mobility across all modes of transport.
Thank you.
And the second question is, the bicycle strategy expects a public mid-program review in 2024 to assess the effectiveness of major projects built to date and to determine projects for 2026 to 2030, page 28. How will this review assess progress without any major projects being completed, and then determine which projects to build in the second half of the strategy period? If Mr. Jess would
Okay.
respond.
Would you like to
Yes,
please
thank you,
respond there?
Mayor. Similar to the previous response, the bicycle strategy mid-program review will be incorporated into the review and update of Council's integrated transport strategy. This will allow for a comprehensive evaluation of transport initiatives to guide future project selection and prioritisation, considering changing transport patterns and preferences, what's been achieved to date and future transport demand, trends and funding.
And we have a
Okay,
third
thank you.
question,
Yep.
Mayor. One of the tasks within the bicycle strategy is for Council to publish major project progress annually tracked against the strategy targets and budget, page 29. Does the council publish this, and if so, where can I find it? Mr. Jess.
Mr. Jett?
Thank you, Mayor. Council recognises the importance of transparency and accountability in the delivery of active transport and is committed to keeping the community informed about our progress. Officers will be briefing councillors with an update by June 2024.
And if I could add to that, Mayor,
Yeah.
each year in our annual report, we do report on our progress in several areas, including transport and cycling, and the expenditure is all listed there in terms of the projects that we've completed.
Okay, thank you. So the next question?
Now we have a question from Stephanie Cockayne, who asked the following. What is the hold-up for delivering the rest of the pop-up bicycle lanes? Council passed a resolution for the DTP works to be delivered, but only half have been completed. Many of these routes are in the bicycle strategy, and DTP had conducted, I should say the Department of Transport and Planning, had conducted the consultation, but nothing happened. The coroner recommended that Hyde Street should be upgraded after a bike fatality with a truck on the parallel Whitehall Street over 6 years ago. So it's disappointing to see the council has done nothing on their local road.
Mr. Jett, would you like to
Thank
answer
you,
that?
Mayor.
Thank you.
The Department of Transport and Planning trialled almost 100 kilometres of new and improved pop-up bike routes across key inner Melbourne suburbs. That trial has now completed. Almost 13 kilometres of new and improved pop-up bike routes around Footscray, Seddon and Yarraville were included in the trial to provide better local connections in and around central Footscray and make it easier for bike riders to get to and from Melbourne CBD. Officers continue to work with the department on exploring how these bike network improvements can be implemented on a permanent basis following the trial period. The Hyde Street bike lane upgrade was proposed but not delivered within the trial. Changed transport movements resulting from the Westgate Tunnel project and the new cycleway will impact the design, budget and timing of the Hyde Street upgrade. We continue to investigate road safety issues across the city with our transport partners and implement recommendations from the coroner and location-specific road safety audits.
And the second question, Mayor, is when will the pop-up bike lanes be made permanent? They were rolled out around 2 years ago. The routes are safer for bikes. There appears to be less cars running and residents still have access to their properties. When will the trial end and the bike lanes become permanent?
Yep. Mr. Jett again.
Yes, thank you. Again, similar to previous answer, that officers will continue to work with the Department of Transport and Planning on evaluating the trial and exploring how the pop-up bike network improvements can be implemented on a permanent basis. Our commitment is to create a cycling-friendly environment that benefits all members of our community, and we look forward to continuing this progress.
Thank you.
The
Next
third question, Mayor, is when are the Dempster Street bike path and Moreland Street bike path lane going to be implemented? Dempster Street, in brackets, route from Railway Path to Creek Trail, close brackets, had consultation a year ago, but not further action appears to have happened. There is no other safe or practical route to ride to Tottenham Station. Moreland Street has seen an increase in cyclists due to the Footscray Road closure and with delay in the delivery of the Hopkins Street path. It would be great to see this built so bikes can get from Bunbury Hyde Street to the Dynon Road path.
Before Mr. Jett answers, could I have Councillor to extend another? Councillor Train and Councillor Carter, would you all in favour? Thank you. All right, next one, thanks. 6, yeah. Mr. Jett.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll start with Dempster Street, which is currently in the design phase and progressing. Officers are progressing with options and approvals to present with to the Department of Transport and Planning. We're working through options which minimise environmental impact, preserve some significant trees, considers the impacts on individual properties and service infrastructure, and ensures safe local traffic environments with clear lines of sight. In regards to Moreland Street, Council is progressing design options which need to take into account current land developments along Moreland Street, the pop-up bike lane trial previously mentioned, and future installation of traffic signals at the Hopkins Street intersection. Both projects are being considered for delivery in future capital budgets.
Thank you. Next
Our
question.
next series of questions come from Pierre Vairo. Hope I pronounced that right, Pierre. He asks the following questions. The eastern end of Hopkins Street has retained its historical 60-kilometre speed limit despite the area's transformation from industrial to residential in the past 5 years. Thousands of people now call it home and thousands more will do so over the next 5 years. Does Council support reducing the speed limit on this street to 40 kilometres per hour to ensure the safety of the people who live and travel throughout the area? Noting that the street recently claimed the life of 22-year-old Frances Jane Ramirez, who was killed attempting to cross the road on her way home.
Mr. Jess, would you like to answer that?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Yes, Council does support the reduction of the speed limit on Hopkins Street from 60 kilometres per hour to 40 kilometres per hour. In late January 2024, our Mayor reached out to Minister Horn, Minister for Roads and Road Safety, advocating for the reduction of the speed limit to 40 kilometres per hour as an important measure to enhance road safety in light of the area's transformation. Council officers and the Department of Transport and Planning are currently examining traffic management strategies and speed limit options, ensuring a holistic approach to safety and mobility in this changing precinct.
Thank you.
The next question is the speed limit on Whitehall Street outside St Monica's Primary is 60 kilometres per hour. The school has recently resorted to petitioning government for safety improvements on Whitehall. Whitehall is set to become more residential with apartments slated for the old Ryco site. Does Council support a reduction of the speed limit to 40 kilometres per hour on Whitehall Street between Hopkins and Bunbury?
Thank
Mrs.
you, Mr.
Jess.
Jess again.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Again, council officers and staff from the Department of Transport and Planning are actively exploring measures to implement a reduced speed limit of 40 kilometres an hour on Whitehall Street, particularly in the stretch near St Monica's School. The current proposal is to establish a remote school zone on Whitehall Street and to officially classify the area as a 40 kilometre an hour zone. Implementation of this is subject, of course, to approval and budget allocation. In the interim, the Department of Transport and Planning are addressing safety concerns raised by the school by delivering signage and line marking improvements on Whitehall Street to highlight the existing pedestrian-operated signal crossing. This is anticipated to be completed by the end of June 2024.
And
Thank
the
you.
third question is there are no direct and safe connections from Footscray towards the city, with cyclists either needing to brave Hopkins Road with heavy vehicles or take a circuitous route via Seddon. Does Council have any plans to build the Franco Cozzo cycling link on Hopkins Street between the Maribyrnong River and Footscray's CBD, either in its entirety or in part? If so, what is Council's anticipated timeframe for construction? Mr.
Thank you,
Jess.
So again, this is a partnership discussion with the Department of Transport and Planning on Council's road network and cycling safety issues across the city. This particular site has included the pop-up bike lane trials on Hopkins Street and the adjoining local roads. We will continue to plan, deliver and assess road network changes to meet the needs of all users across the city, including this area.
Thank you. Next question.
Next question is from Christopher Zereb, who asked the following. Last year, Council endorsed plans to improve the streetscape of Barclay Street in West Footscray. Do Council have plans to improve the streets and amenity in Footscray CBD? If not, why is this the case, since Footscray CBD is showing the most obvious signs of an area needing TLC in the city of Maribyrnong?
Yeah.
I think that's our Acting
Ashley?
Director of Planning and Environment.
Mr. Ashley
Thank
Minnie?
you.
Thank you, CEO. So Council has undertaken several public realm improvements in the Footscray CBD in the past and plans to continue incremental upgrades subject to available budget. Projects completed last financial year include upgrades to Byron Plaza with new lighting, seating and landscaping, Dalmahoy Street with a complete reconstruction of the road as a shared space with seating and tree planting, and also the installation of the Nicholson Street play space in Nicholson Mall, a temporary installation which attracts families with small children to the area. This financial year there will be upgrades to Blackstone Lane next to Chemist Warehouse to provide a more inviting pedestrian space with new lighting installations in Nicholson Street between Paisley and Irving Street, also slated for this financial year. In terms of the longer term projects, Council is working with the state government to centralise buses in the Footscray CBD along Irving Street adjacent Footscray train station, allowing direct connections between buses, trains and trams. Once those buses are removed from Paisley Street, a complete reconstruction of the street can take place, including new drainage, extended footpaths and more greening. The project is subject to state government funding being provided for the relocation of buses. Council is also working with the state government on the upgrades to the Route 82 tram, which will provide opportunities along the route for more pedestrian-friendly streets, as well as tree planting.
Back in February 2020, I received an email from Council in response to my email regarding the atrocious state of Paisley Street, Footscray, particularly after rain causes the uneven footpath to pool, causing problems for people, especially with mobility issues. The email from Council stated that the job was earmarked to be renewed in the 21-22 budget, subject to approval from relevant authority. It's now 2024 and still nothing has changed. Why was this job not renewed in 21-22? How much longer do our community have to accept facilities that don't meet basic minimum standards?
Okay.
Thanks.
Yes, thank
Direct
you,
infrastructure.
Council officers have prepared a detailed design to address the drainage issues on this particular section of Paisley Street. The works will entail regrading and renewal of the footpath with similar materials, improving the drainage and stormwater runoff, and lifting the level of service pits as required. Officers are currently looking to procure a contractor for the works. Once the contractor is engaged, we'll be in a better position to provide a detailed program of these works and service authority alterations. Our preferred option is to undertake works at night to minimise disruption to traders and the general public. We're hoping for these works to be completed in the next few months.
We now
Next
have
question.
some questions from Brian Sanderson.
Excuse me, through the chair. The question is actually asking what happened with the timeline. I think Mr. Jess has very adequately and aptly detailed what we're doing going forward. But the question was, why wasn't it done in 2021? And I highlight this because the question will come back next month saying this still wasn't answered last month. Mr. Jess, are you able to indicate what the hold-up was from 2021 to now?
Yes, through the chair, I guess going to the
COVID.
previous question before that, noting the proposal to upgrade Paisley Street in its entirety, including the bus relocations, made sense for these works to occur under one project. Given that hasn't proceeded, Council has brought these works forward for this particular part of Paisley Street.
Thank you. Clear.
And I think
Next
also the COVID pandemic did have some impact on our delivery of infrastructure.
Thank you, Chief Exec. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Brian Sanderson has the following questions. Firstly, late last year, Council approved a motion to cancel contracts with companies, businesses and individuals who support Israel. Can the CEO please outline what progress has been made regarding this action, how many contracts have been cancelled, and if there have been any challenges from this business regarding, or these businesses regarding a breach of contract? And can I start by saying that wasn't the council resolution. The council resolution was to investigate what contracts the council had with Israeli or Israeli related companies and to report back to council, and we have mentioned that earlier this evening. As I said, council officers are currently reviewing and determining next steps in regard to this action from the notice of motion, and a future report will be presented to council once officers have completed their investigation into current contracts. And I may say that this is quite a comprehensive project and will take some time.
Okay, thank
The
you, CEO.
second question, further to the above, what steps is council taking to support Israeli and Jewish citizens and employees to feel safe and supported given the current conflict and pro-Palestinian rhetoric of councillors. Would you like me to?
Would
I
Mr.
think
Lucas,
the
some-
Director of Community Services.
Yeah.
Thank you, CEO, and through you, Mayor. So Council is committed to supporting all members of the community to have a culturally safe and inclusive municipality. To this end, Council recently adopted the Maribyrnong Intercultural City Strategy, which sets out Council's commitment to improving inclusion, supporting diversity and addressing racism and discrimination in all forms. There's a number of ways in which we will be doing this. So, for example, we'll be raising awareness of racism and how it affects individuals in the broader community. Number two, identifying and promoting and building on positive programs to build resilience, empowering communities and individuals to take action and to prevent and reduce racism, to seek help where it occurs. Also, just note that Council's adopted notice of motion on 21st of November also included a statement condemning all forms of racism, including Islamophobia and anti-Semitism. From an organisational perspective, senior council officers have enacted cultural and psychological safety plans for staff who may be affected by the current conflict, including those of Jewish heritage, of which council does have a number of staff. In addition to a clear and inclusive staff code of conduct, support includes regular management check-ins, modified duties where appropriate and necessary, and also access to council's employee assistance program.
Thank you.
Now, the third question here is, on the 26th of January, Council posted on its Instagram a photo of 5 councillors in front of the flags at half-mast. Can the 2 councillors not in attendance please explain why they did not attend this important ceremony? It's up to those 2 councillors if they want to respond, but I can say I understand they were both actually on leave, but do you wish to say anything?
I'm more than happy to. I had been leading a high-level delegation of federal members of parliament on a high-level visit to Indonesia and had returned on a red-eye flight the night before. One of the delegates on that trip had come down with COVID. I wasn't feeling particularly well. I tested negative before getting on the plane. Still felt miserable when I landed. It might have been exhaustion travelling with federal MPs for a few weeks, but didn't think it was worth the risk, having returned on a red-eyed flight, getting in at 6, 7 in the morning and feeling unwell with a confirmed case of COVID amongst the delegates.
Is that good enough?
Thank you, Councillor Carter.
Councillor Tran.
I confirm I was also on a very high-profile delegation to go see my grandmother up in Queensland, and so I was not available to be here.
Oh, I don't know what to eat there.
My grandmother was indeed in assistance as she was on the way to the hospital, so hence why I was not here. But I do acknowledge the intent of the question.
Absolutely.
And through the chair, just to add that I led on the flag lowering last year as mayor, and that was the first one that we'd had. So
Absolutely
I was
correct.
incredibly proud to do that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Now, Warren Penner asked the following questions. Does Council have a planting strategy or policy for Footscray Gardens to boost its botanical diversity into the future to coexist with the master plan? Would Council actively develop a partnership with the Royal Botanic Gardens or the Growing Friends of the Botanical Gardens to ensure botanical diversity, rare and threatened plants and uniquely interesting flora is represented alongside current garden maintenance? I think the Director Infrastructure, Patrick Jess, might answer that.
Thank you, CEO. Council operates with within the heritage guidelines for Footscray Gardens to retain its Edwardian gardens with annual planting and maintenance programs, so without any particular internal policy or strategy within the organisation. With regards to the second point, we would absolutely welcome conversation and discussions with those organisations to see what we can learn and partner if we can.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jett. Could I have another
Yes,
councillor
Sorry,
to
Your
extend?
Worship, apropos of the last question, could I just make the observation that Footscray Park Gardens, one of the finest examples of Edwardian gardens in the nation, we've been very successful, Your Worship, over in excess of 100 years in ensuring the maintenance and upkeep of that garden, and it stands head and shoulders above so many other like-type gardens and facilities anywhere in this state. Can I just say, I'd like to commend the arborists and our gardening team who've been working in Footscray Park for over 100 years to create what is an exemplar for not just this state, Your Worship, but for the nation as a piece of a masterful botanical asset.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Would I have Councillor to give extension? Councillor Carter and Councillor Clark. Okay, would I, the motion to the vote? Yeah, thank you. We all carry. So the next question.
The next question, we have 17 questions in relation to the Footscray Park Western Lawn. I'll read all the questions and then I have a single quite comprehensive response to be provided that addresses the queries raised. So the first two questions are from Diane Valencia, who asks, number one, when will the Western Lawn Dog Park reopen for public use? And number two, according to the Master Plan 2011, the Western Lawn is expected to remain as an off-leash dog area. Why are parts of the lawn being paved? Then Scott Lyon has three questions. Why has the community not been consulted in relation to this significant change to the Footscray Master Plan 2011? By what authority has Council made a significant unendorsed change to the Footscray Park Master Plan 2011? What process did Council go through to seek significant change to the Footscray Park Master Plan 2011? Then Warren Penner asks, number one, the renovation of Footscray Park's Western Lawn has seen the scope of the work go beyond the vision of the master plan to include a path system that leads nowhere and serves little purpose. This decision has gone against all community consultation recommendations. How did this happen? How will Council ensure such decisions are not made into the future, and how do Council plan to fix the problem? Rafaela Lopez asked the following questions. Firstly, how can Council make decisions related to the ponds and gardens, as well as constructing a compact gravel path around the edges of the western lawn of the park without any kind of community consultation at all? Number two, how will these changes affect the heritage nature of Footscray Park? Then we have Marie Pardy, who asked three questions. Firstly, is there a governance problem at MCC? How does it happen that council officers, and presumably the CEO, can approve expenditure for works that violate council-endorsed commitments? I ask this in relation to the decision to construct a gravel path on the edge of Footscray Park Western Lawn. It is well known that this proposal was previously rejected by council, and it deviates significantly from the existing master plan. Yet works have been contracted and are underway, degrading the heritage values of the park and smuggling in potential for alternate priorities for the use of the western lawn. I'm not sure we're smuggling anything in, but I'll continue with the question. Can officers simply overturn council decisions? As a matter of procedure, could you please inform the community about whether the brief to consultants or contractors for upgraded turf works on the western lawn aligned with the Footscray Park's Community Advisory Panel's report, which serves as the council endorsed guide to the future development of the western lawn? And why did council choose not to publicly display plans for the western lawns? Number three, how quickly can these works be stopped and the turf upgrade be continued as per the master plan and in accordance with the already endorsed council commitments to the park as minuted in previous council meetings and resolutions? I'm sorry that this may incur costs, but the intangible costs of running roughshod over the heritage values and future benefit of the park will ensure greater long-term costs. The long-term costs of lack of trust in council decisions. Councillor authority and council officers' accountability may be even greater for our community. When can the work be stopped? Sharon Schwab asked, I think, 2 or 3 questions. Firstly, in relation to Footscray Park's western lawn, was the design consultant asked to include and/or did council suggest to include any items that do not form part of the Footscray Master Plan 2011? If yes, what were those items and who authorised this? Number 2, installation of drainage and irrigation systems, plus aeration, fertilisation, scarifying herbicide and topsoiling of high-grade turf, plus line markings on grass is being used by council as an effective way to manage and maintain high-functioning open spaces without a track. This maintenance and management approach can be seen at Johnson Reserve, Henry Turner South and Yarraville Gardens, just to name a few. Can Council use these ground maintenance and management approaches on Footscray Park's western lawn? And thirdly, Footscray Park's western lawn is designated for use by residents for informal recreation and play and off-leash dogs. What area of the western lawn is being permanently allocated for residents' use benefits, separate to organised sporting use, where clubs receive priority use in all peak use periods? Then Wendy Davidson asks, firstly, did Council disclose or release the design plans for Footscray Park's western lawn to community or any Council staff member, including councillors, outside of the immediate project team? If so, when? Number 2, are plans and or works to Footscray Park's western lawn subject to, or have they ever been subject to confidentiality? If so, when and by whom? Number 3, is or will Council conduct an investigation of its upper management in relation to poor management and maintenance of Footscray Park's playground and water gardens, and now the commissioning and progressing of plans outside the scope of the Footscray Park Master Plan?
Would you like to respond that, Tia?
Yes, I will start, and the Director of Infrastructure may like to add. And I will say the decision, I will firstly acknowledge as the CEO that I too am very disappointed that the community were not informed about the plans for the western lawn, and that is a complete oversight which shouldn't have happened, and we will be ensuring we're reviewing that whole process, and we'll certainly ensure that will never happen again. I've got a number of explanations for these different things. So in regard to the granitic sand path, the sand path around the perimeter of the newly upgraded western lawn was made based on 2 key criteria: community access and functionality, asset management and maintenance, and also heritage impact. So firstly, the western lawn, when complete, will be used for a range of uses, including community events, informal use such as off-dog lead areas, informal walking. We know our community walking is one of its most popular activities, as well as community sports. And in community sports, I'm not talking about professional sports teams, I'm talking about the priority being community sports. It is expected to be a highly utilised space. When in use for the previously mentioned activities, the path will provide access for alternative uses such as walking or running, and will be accessible for those requiring wheelchair access and, for example, parents pushing a pram. Walking is the #1 recreational pursuit among Maribyrnong residents, and the path enables this activity to occur even when the western lawn is in use, greatly increasing participation opportunities and the return on Council's $8 million investment for the community to upgrade the western lawn. The inclusion of the path aligns with the strategic priorities in the Council plan, the Municipal Public Health and Wellbeing Plan, and in particular healthy and active outcomes, and Council's recently adopted walking strategy. In regard to asset management and maintenance, the newly laid turf is a high quality couch grass able to withstand high levels of wear and tear. The existing turf outside the western lawn is a different grass species, and if not controlled will take over the new turf area. The path provides a physical barrier allowing protection of the new turf and enabling more efficient and cost-effective maintenance. And you will see examples of this in neighbouring municipalities, and one actually opposite the Maribyrnong River in Moonee Valley. It's also, you'll find these granitic paths at the Botanical Gardens, so obviously the tan there separates the grass and provides a great exercise area. Werribee Mansion has it protecting its different grass species as well, just to name a few. The new Western Lawn area has been engineered with a highly technical drainage system. The existing turf outside the Western Lawn area does not have existing drainage infrastructure. This means that in the case of rain events, the grassed area outside the new Western Lawn surface would be largely unusable. Without the granitic path, there will be no access for wheelchairs, prams, or all ability people to, and any people to exercise outside the Western Lawn. In decision-making, in regard to the decision-making process, as a master plan is implemented, it is subject to change as required at the time of detailed design, investigation and site due diligence. This has been the case with the Western Lawn upgrade, and at its December meeting in 2022, Council awarded the contract with the inclusion of the perimeter path. I might also mention that the Council resolved to undertake the works on the Western Lawn in its budget in 2022, and in October 2022, when we found the issues with the site that were not known at the time of the master plan, we had to return to Council with an increased figure for the cost. So the path, all of those reports are on the public record. The path is considered an operational requirement aligned with Council's strategic imperatives and within Council's decision-making remit as the land manager. The designs were also approved through relevant external authorities such as Melbourne Water and Heritage Victoria, being respectful of the site's historical significance. The Western Lawn is expected to be open for community use from June 2024. Do you wish to add anything, Director Infrastructure?
Nothing further to add, thank you, CEO.
All right, Mayor, that's the end of our questions.
Thank you, CEO. If there are no more questions, I declare the public question time close at 7:26 p.m. Thank you. Okay. Now, confirm that the minute, agenda item 6.1, confirmation of the minutes of the 12 December 2023 at the council meeting. I call for the councillor to move that minute of the ordinary council meeting held on the 12th of December 2023 to be confirmed. Councillor Carter.
As per the officer recommendation, that council confirms the minutes of the council meeting held on 12th of December 2023.
Thank you. Can I call for the second for the motion? Councillor Crawford. Are there any questions or point of clarification, Councillor? Would the mover would like to speak to the motion?
It's procedural, so formally.
Thank you. The second would like to speak for the motion.
Formally seconded.
Okay, we'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Okay, all those against? I declare the motion is carried. Thank you. Reporting from the committee, advising councillor that there are no report from the committee to be tabled at the meeting. So the petition advise the councillor that according with the council meeting procedures, a councillor might read the petition text but not in permit to speak to the motion. So, yeah, councillor.
Point of clarification, if possible, just considering that even though we're tabling all three petitions, none of them met the formal requirements of section 54.9, I think just in the public interest, at some point it'd be worth repeating what those requirements are.
I don't know if the Director Corporate wants to respond.
Thank you, CEO, and through the Chair, there are a number of elements which would qualify a valid petition, so I understand the question. We'll come back to councillors on that.
Okay. So the petition number 8.1, introduced a curfew in Maribyrnong. Could I call for councillor to move the item? Councillor Clark. Would you?
Yeah, that council receives and notes petition introduce a cat curfew in Maribyrnong, and to request the Chief Executive Officer to consider the petition and determine the appropriate response. I commend the motion to you.
Thank you. Could I call for councillor to second the motion? Councillor Crawford. Are there any questions or point of clarification, Councillor?
Through the chair, and I think just in light of some emails that we've received, I'm just requesting clarification from you that we are indeed just noting the petition today. No decision is being made. This is standard procedure for when we receive petitions. We're just noting it with a report to come back to council.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, now I put the motion into the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare the motions carry. Thank you, Councillor Cowper. Now, agenda item 2, also petitioned. I will councillor to move the petition receiving improved Joseph Broad Precinct Footscray. Councillor Clark.
Yes, thanks again, Your Worship. Councillors, I move that Council 1 receives and notes the petition Improved Joseph's Road Precinct Footscray, and 2 requests the Chief Executive Officer to consider the petition and determine the appropriate response.
Okay, thank you. Could I call for the second, Councillor Crawford? Okay, now I will put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare the motion is carried. So the agenda number item 8.3, and so the petition, Jack Magarini Reserve. Could I call for Councillor to move the petition receive? Councillor Anthony Tran.
Thank you, Mayor. And that per the officer's recommendation that council receives and notes the petition, Jack Magazine's Reserve, and 2 request that the Chief Executive Officer to consider the petition and determine the appropriate responses.
Thank you. Could I call for the second, Councillor Crawford? Okay, now I put the motion into the vote. Are those in favour? Are those against? The motion is carried. So agenda 9.1, quarterly performance and financial report, period ending 31st of December 2023. Could I call for the councillor to move the motion in regard to the item agenda 9.1?
Your Worship.
Councillor Clark.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Councillors, I move that Council 1 notes the 2023-2024 second quarter performance and financial report, and that a revised budget pursuant to section 97(3) of the Local Government Act 2020 is not required, and 2, notes the continuing impact of the October 2022 flooding events and subsequent financial hardship to affected residents of Maribyrnong community, and resolves, in accordance with section 169 of the Local Government Act 1989, to continue to provide financial relief to identified residents by offering a rebate of 50% on the 23-24 third and fourth instalments of rates and municipal charge upon application, brackets, noting this rebate does not apply for state government's fire services levy, in brackets. Councillors, I commend the motion to you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Can I call for Councillor to second the motion? Councillor Tran. Are there any questions or point of clarification, Councillor? Would the mover glad to speak to the motion?
Just very quickly, Your Worship. Councillors, as we're all aware, the quarterly performance and financial report is very much part of the ongoing mechanism for Council to remain accountable to the community. It very much provides an overview of Council's financial results and very much gives us an understanding of what variations need to be adopted in relation to our budget position. Councillors, the fact is, for the period 1 October to 31 December 2023, we've seen a number of variations across revenue and expenditure categories, and this has resulted in an overall improved performance to an aggregate level at 31st December 2023 of $444,258. This is an excellent position for this council to be in at this particular point in time. The favourable position in employee costs that we have managed to achieve is very much offset by unfavourable forecasts in agency contractors. That's just a reality. The fact is, councillors, contractor costs are going up, capital costs continue to escalate. This will become a critical issue, I would suggest, as we continue to formulate our budget for 24-25 financial year. I do want to highlight, councillors, that the actions of the council plan are being delivered, and that's important. 26% or 16 of the 61 actions that we've identified in that plan have been completed, and another 67% or 41 of those actions are progressing to target. Our capital assets, our expenditure up until December is sitting at 30.97 million. We will continue to spend, but more than spending, we will continue to improve our overall asset base. And we're managing to do that within the confines of our budget. This is a wonderful situation to be in. I do want to acknowledge that at the end of the second quarter, we don't have to look at a revised budget to deal with our financial position. I think in this context, I really need to acknowledge the fabulous work of Executive Director King, Lisa King, and Manager of Financial Services, Mark Connor, and his team. Absolutely brilliant. Bringing this budget in, not just on budget, but actually managing to secure a more favourable financial position. Not much, over $200 million. $447,000 is not, a bit of a spit in the ocean, really. But better we're in the black than we're in the red. I also want to highlight that we are continuing with our 50% reduction or offering of a rebate, I beg your pardon, for the third and fourth instalments of the rates and municipal charges. This is an excellent position, councillors. Let's hope we can continue this to the end of the financial year. I commend the motion to you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Would the second would like to speak to the motion, Councillor Train?
Formally seconded, Mayor. I think Councillor Clark has spoken quite substantially to the motion already.
Thank you. Are there any speakers for the motion? Yep. Councillor Carter?
Just quickly to say, I really do support this motion in the sense of the rebates for flood-affected residents. We're still looking at, and we've just had a review of our Community Recovery Committee, which I sat on with flood-affected residents last year, met monthly, and the rates rebate really is a tangible help and assistance to them. We marked the 1 year anniversary late last year, and to only have about 50% of residents back in their homes with ongoing works, it's a long road to recovery, and we do head now, heading into the wet season in a few months, and there are questions being raised about further supports, and just to say that we are coming forward with that review of the committee soon. But one of the recommendations, and I think I flagged this at last week's meeting, Mayor, is just to ensure that notification, because that's one of the things that was raised to me by flood-affected residents, is to make sure that we're actually advertising this rebate on the rates notice. I still haven't had an answer, CEO, to my question about whether it had dropped off, because a resident had suggested, I just pay mine when I get the alert by CBA, but the physical rates notice, just to let people know, because we haven't had a full subscription for that rates rebate. And there's obviously a myriad of reasons why people might not, but there was a concern that it had fallen off the rates notice. So I'd just like to ensure that we do include it on the hard copy rates notices.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. Any other speaker for the motion? Okay. Well, I would like to say a couple words in terms of the people who get flood affected. They also, it's a cost of living is very difficult for them, and I think every single dollar we give them and support them with that rebate has been very, very helpful for the community and residents. So I wish they're gonna come back to their home as soon as they could. Any other speaker against the motion? Now I would like to put the motion into the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare the motion is carried. Item 9.2, Nature Strip Landscape Policy and Guideline Review. Could I call for the councillor to move the motion in regard to this agenda item 9.2? Councillor Bernadette Thomas? Yes, Councillor? Yeah.
Thanks, Mayor. The officer recommendation is that Council 1 note the feedback received from the community that informed the revision of the existing nature strip landscape policy and guidelines, and 2, endorse the release of the draft nature strip planting policy and draft nature strip planting guidelines for community consultation.
Thank you, Could I call for the councillor to second the motion? Councillor Trent? Yep. Are there any questions for point of clarification, councillor? Would the mover would like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I'll just say a few things. This has been a fairly, I guess, lengthy process, and the community's been both patient but also has participated really well in the first round of consultation. I think we had over 200 contributions, which is really great, which shows that there is an interest in, planting out nature strips, but also an appetite for change and for revising and reviewing the current guidelines and policy, and probably bringing the policy and guidelines a little more into line with some of our neighbours and councils across the city. I think the officers have done pretty well in responding to the feedback that they received from the community. So I really do encourage all of those who participated in the first round of consultation to join again and give us your feedback on this version, because this is really where we really need your feedback, because this is sort of the final draft. So thanks again. It's great to see so much interest in, I guess, planting out what is, I think, about 8% or maybe 8 to 10% of open space sort of available across the city. So it's a really important process to get involved in. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Would like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, only in brief, Mayor. I'll just note that this entire process has followed quite a stringent process of consultation and consideration, which is most commonly the course the council takes. I believe there were 6 stages for consideration. So for the community's benefit, our first initial stage was an environmental analysis of local government, and then that initial stage that Councillor Thomas spoke to in terms of community engagement, especially with regard to our existing permit applicants. So those of you who already hold the planting permits, there was particularly regard to yourselves, and then consideration of any issues and opportunities that could come along with this particular proposed policy, and then obviously the provision of the policy information to councillors for our consideration as well, for our initial look over the draft, and now it's out again for consultation for the draft policy. One of the things that is clear to council is that sometimes in these policies they're quite full, for lack of better words, and sometimes they're quite complex in terms of navigating the requirements for yourselves, and including those who are currently applicants. As you can see in sort of some of the surveys, applicants weren't really sure weren't really aware that the policy entailed permit applications. So it will be a part of council's work to make sure that our community remain well informed as to the requirements of this particular policy as we go along the way. Once a consultation finishes, that does not and council's job in terms of keeping our community informed and indeed continuing to ensure that all the permit applicants remain in line with the policy. We want to continue these discussions well beyond the end of this engagement process. And I'm sure the director responsible and the CEO can attest to that as well. It's not just for this particular policy, but for all other council policies as well. So I really do commend the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Train. Are there any speaker for the motion? Councillor Clark?
Yeah, just to say, thanks, Your Worship. Look, I was actually on council in 2014 when we first adopted the nature strip landscape policy and guidelines. And the whole idea, councillors, was to provide an alternative to mown grass nature strips in front of the property. You know, since 2014, there have been significant changes occur. And that's why if I remember correctly, in August 2022, Council endorsed the original review of the existing nature strip landscape policy and guidelines. Critical to the reforms that we're looking at, critical to the policy that we're looking to release for further community consultation, has been the engagement with our community. It has been an iterative process. We've gone out, we've sought the thoughts, concerns, the vision of our community as to how nature strips can be formed in the later part, or the coming up to the mid part of the 21st century. I think it's an enormous advance. No longer is it simply a piece of green lawn, but a lot of native garden is out there. It provides habitat for native fauna, particularly bird life, specifically. It's a great advance, a great change that we're seeing in the landscape of our city. I can only commend the motion to you, councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Any other speaker for the motion? Okay, thank you. I would like to say a couple of words in terms of very positive from the multicultural community, because I feel that their home has been extended from along the footpath, so they can grow something that, plant, something they can look at, and particularly the people with senior people, they would love to do it like another garden, so they can come and water and look after that. It's really very supportive. People very, very happy with that. Yeah, thank you. Any speaker against for the motion? Now I put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare the motion is carried. Now the climate item 9.3, Climate Emergency Community Advisory Committee, the term of reference. I call for the councillor to move a motion in regard to agenda item 9.3. Councillor Crawford.
That Council 1, establish the Climate Emergency Advisory Committee. 2, approve the terms of reference for the Maribyrnong Climate Emergency Advisory Panel, shown in Attachment 1. And 3, note that an expression of interest process for membership of the Maribyrnong Climate Emergency Advisory Panel will be conducted, with a further report to be presented to Council to recommend the selection of committee members.
Thank you, Councillor Crawford. Could I call for the councillor to second the motion? Councillor Thomas. Are there any question or point of clarification, councillor? Would councillor the mover would like to speak to the motion?
Thank you. I've got high hopes for this committee. I certainly, hopefully by now we're all aware of the challenges ahead of us with climate change already having big impacts on this community. Certainly we're fortunate to have some really good people working for us at council already, but there's also a lot of expertise out there in the community. So I'm certainly hopeful that by developing this committee, we're able to bring some of that expertise in to assist with what we're doing here at council, and also to help us to further collaborate with residents to try to get the whole community working in the same direction of trying to A, mitigate, but B, also adapt to the climate emergency that we're all facing. So, yeah, very excited. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Would the second would like to speak to the motion, Councillor Thomas?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I just want to add a couple of things. I think this is a really exciting sort of step in our climate response at council, but also, as Councillor Crawford said, in partnership with the community. We know we've got an engaged community around climate issues, and I know we'll have a lot of people interested. Council does receive from time to time public questions increasingly around our climate response and what actions we're taking to locally to respond to the climate emergency. So I'm looking forward to seeing a variety of expressions of interest from people who are sort of boots and all in on climate action, but also people who are perhaps new or want to contribute in a variety of ways. So thanks to officers for bringing this to us. As I said, I think it's a great next step in our climate response activity.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Are there any other speaker for the motion? Yeah. Okay, are there any speaker against the motion? I would like to put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? No, I declare the motion is carried. Art, item 9.4, Art Advisory Committee, the term of reference. Could I call for Councillor to move the motion in regard to agenda item 9.4? Councillor Carter.
As per the officer recommendation that Council 1 establish the Maribyrnong Arts Advisory Committee, 2, adopt the Maribyrnong Arts Advisory Committee terms of reference shown in attachment 1, and 3, note that an expression of interest process for membership of the Maribyrnong Arts Advisory Committee will be conducted, with a further report to be presented to Council to recommend the selection of committee members.
Thank you. Could I call for the councillor to second the motion? Councillor Carter, sorry, Councillor Clark?
She's everywhere.
Yeah. Any question or point of clarification, councillor? Would the mover would like to speak to the motion?
Just to say that we very obviously have a highly engaged, and just with the last motion too that Bernadette was speaking to, we've got a second advisory committee, and the function of these advisory committees is really important to council to get informed input into our direction. So we really want to see a diverse group of people applying to be on those, obviously either with an interest in the climate emergency and in this instance arts. There was a review of a former Arts Ambassadors Committee that we used to have, but we had a hiatus from that from April 2022 to re-evaluate the committee, its purpose, to take on feedback from those arts ambassadors. And this is a broader committee structure that we'll have now, which will allow for a greater, I guess, reflection of different art forms and modalities as well. I think the former committee was quite prescriptive and looking at council's kind of public art, but this will look at all the art forms in the city of Maribyrnong, and a great suite of arts practitioners. And we know in recent years we've really seen a surgence of artists who have moved into the city and are proud to call it home. So again, high aspirations for this one, and I can't wait to see the diversity of candidates and art genres that we get represented on this committee. So I commend the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. Would the second would like to speak to the motion?
Again, just briefly, thanks, Your Worship. Look, councillors, Maribyrnong has been known for quite some time as a remarkable, vibrant and art cultural scene. We actively support the arts in many forms, whether it's visual, performing, public installations, which we are inclined to secure on a fairly regular basis. I believe the establishment of this new committee is timely, given that we're going to have an updated arts and cultural strategy, and I think that's planned for sometime during the 2024 calendar year. The advisory committee is really important in ensuring that we've actually got a relationship, a clear nexus between council and the arts community. And in this way, what we can do is ensure that the arts community are cognizant, very clear, of what council's objectives are in the realm of art and public arts. I'd like to thank both the community and council officers for undertaking the review of the former Arts Ambassadors Committee. Did a great job. What we've got here proposed, councillors, is very much an authentic engagement with the arts community. And it's going to give us a guide to the development, the implementation, and I think the strategies of what the council's arts agenda is going to be going forward. I can only say, councillors, I commend the motion to you. This is a great one for us all.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Will any speaker for the motion? Any speaker against the motion? Now I put the vote into the, I put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare the motion is carried. The agenda item 9.5, awarding of contract number 1256-24, provision of Cowper Street Capital Improvement Plan. Could I call for Councillor to move a motion in regard to agenda item 9.5? Councillor?
Okay.
Councillor,
thank you. Is
go
that
for it.
Yep.
Yeah.
The Council 1 awards contract number 1256-24, provision of, is that provision of provision? Is that, I'm guessing that's a typo. Provision of Cowper Street Capital Improvement Project to Grampians Excavations Proprietary Limited for the total contract sum of $6,908,909.64, excluding GST, and 2, authorises the Chief Executive Officer to execute contract number 1256-24, provision of Cowper Street Capital Improvement Projects to Grampians Excavations Proprietary Limited.
Thank you, Councillor. Could I call for Councillor to second the motion? Councillor Carter, Councillor Clark?
Your award. I just thinking no one was going to put their hand up.
I'm talking a lot tonight and I worry that...
So who would like to be?
The ward councillor, I think.
Okay, Councillor Clark.
Absolutely.
$6 million in your, if you don't want it, I'll take it for River Ward.
I'm going to do another 6 million after this. I've
I
moved
know.
12 million bucks, close to 13 million bucks in a few minutes.
Okay, I need a question for point of clarification, Councillor. Would like to speak to the motion?
Very briefly, it's awarding of contracts, so officers have done the due diligence, so thank you to officers for that. Just to know that I know I've been approached by a couple of people about this project, so we will be working with affected property owners to discuss the moving forward of the project.
Thank you, Councillor
Thank you.
Crawford. Would the second would like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. And I do note that, yes, it's almost just under $7 million worth of works that are going into Cowper Street. But, councillors, I do make the point that it's not just roadway, we're also reconstructing underground drainage systems with rain gardens envisaged, building brand new pedestrian footpaths and footbridges, as well as looking at regulating parking opportunities through line marking, as well as tree planting, and not just trees but shrubs and soft landscaping. Lighting is going into the area to ensure better illumination. As some people may or may not be aware, particularly the southern aspect of Cowper Street has been unmade for quite some years. I think It's never been made, to the best of my knowledge, but I have come across roadways similar to this in other jurisdictions where, in fact, you'd swear that it was always unpaved, but in fact, it was just let to rot. I don't think that that was the case with Cowper Street. I think it quite simply was just never paved. We have a number of streets throughout the municipality like this that have not been paved, Avoca Street being another one, which is also on the agenda for being resurfaced, or not resurfaced, to be surfaced. This, again, is a demonstration that this council progressively will improve the roads and drainage and aesthetics of our city. $7 million, just under $7 million, is no mean feat for any local government authority to be paying out. And this is not the most salubrious part of our city, councillors, not by any stretch. However, without fear, without favour, we look to advance the well-being of our community. We look to advance the aesthetics of the entire city. This is a great place to live. This council stands behind its ongoing primacy as the gateway to the West. The actions that we apply here in relation to Cowper Street, again, are a demonstration of our commitment to maintaining that primacy. Councillors, I commend the motion to you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Clark. Any other speaker for the motion? Okay. Are there any speaker against for the motion? Now I will put the motion into the vote. Are those in favour? Okay. Are those against? I declare the motion is carried. Agenda item 9.6, awarding of contract 1257-24 provision of Joseph Road, Hopkins Street to Heavenly Queen Temple Reconstruction Project. Can I call for Councillor to move the motion in regard to the agenda item 9.6? Councillor Clark.
So rude.
13 million.
So rude.
Eat your heart out, Councillor Tran.
Okay.
Councillors, your worship, I move that Council 1 award contract number 1257-24, provision of Joseph's Road, Hopkins Street, Hopkins Street to the Heavenly Queen Temple Reconstruction Project to GP Bluestone Construction Proprietary Limited for the total contract sum of $6,245,323, excluding GST, and 2, authorise the Chief Executive Officer to execute contract number 1257-24, provision of Joseph's Road Hopkins Street to Heavenly Queen Temple Reconstruction Project to GP Bluestone Proprietary Limited. Councillors, I commend the motion to you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Could I call for the councillor to second the motion? Councillor Crawford.
You're not in the hunt, Councillor Tran.
Okay, Councillor Crawford. Are there any questions for the point of clarification? Which Muda would like to speak to the motion?
Just briefly, Your Worship. Again, firstly, I'd like to just highlight how much interest is here this evening and has been with us for the last few months in its more consolidated form around Joseph's Road and the developments that need to occur at Joseph's Road. And I acknowledge the presence of Daryl and Chloe here from Friends of Joseph's Road, Footscray. Thanks for so much for your time this evening. Councillors, as I don't know how many people around this table actually understand the history of what's going on. Councillor, former mayor, she was mayor at the time in 2010, I believe, when she went toe-to-toe with, at the time, Planning Minister Guy as to how this development was going to unfold. this council was very clear about a tiered and graduated approach to the developments that needed to occur in Joseph's Road. At the time, Minister Guy adopted a strategy that is best encapsulated with the idea of, instead of ready, aim, fire, it was ready, fire, aim. It was wholesale. To me, it resembled something like Tombstone Territory. What was that place in the United States at the OK Corral? Yeah, anyway, it was like a shooting match to me. I couldn't believe how such well thought out public policy around development could be jettisoned wholesale, for no good reason. And the outcome has been what is best described as a piecemeal development occurring. Excellent in terms of so many of the built form, no question about that. Joseph's Road, in terms of so many of the building towers, the building blocks in that precinct, look fantastic. However, underpinning the development needs to be the infrastructure. And the infrastructure really has to be seen as part of not just council's responsibility, but the responsibility of the state, the responsibility of the developers, and the responsibility of the body corporates as well. So what we've got here now is the Joseph's Road Public Realm Project. And this really is going to ensure the enhancement of the entire precinct. Our contribution to the roadway development from Hopkins Street round to the Heavenly Queen is very much a sentinel project that is going to improve the amenity of the district. What we're seeing at the moment is a precinct that is very much underdeveloped. This council is clear in its commitment to ensure that there is the appropriate infrastructure, both roadway, drainage, and landscaping. It's fundamental, it's critical if this area is going to have the aesthetics necessary for the health and well-being of the community of the Joseph's Road precinct. It's in that context, councillors, I commend the motion to you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Would the mover, the second, would like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, I think Councillor Clark's covered it pretty well, but yeah, just to say to the residents, you know, we do feel your pain. Unfortunately, you know, we did see it coming a mile away just by the lack of planning that occurred at the time. But, you know, we will do our best to try to make this area as livable as possible, as quickly as possible. You know, $6.2 million, that's a big sum, but it's not going to be enough. We know we need to do more, and we've certainly got more planned. And I guess to those worried about some of the figures we're talking about tonight, we do get a good chunk from developer contributions, but obviously it'd be nice to get more. We're in a very financially restricted environment at the moment, so like I said, we'll be doing as much as we can as quickly as we can, but unfortunately this project was set up to not fail, but set up to be a very messy process. So yeah, unfortunately we're having to deal with that mess, and yeah, we'll do it as best we can.
Thank you, Councillor Crawford.
Nice
Any
one.
speaker for the motion? Councillor Hawkins? Yeah.
I think a lot of the details have already been covered. First of all, I just wanted to thank the community, in particular Just Road Action Group, for sort of bringing this sort of further up the list of priorities, I suppose, in terms of council considerations. As Councillor Clark pointed out, obviously there's a range of sort of original sins involved in this that make it all the harder for us to do the work. But the work, as obviously residents are so aware, is extremely necessary. I mean, I've visited a few times, partly sometimes looking for rental properties there, and I mean, there's a certain dystopian flavour to the place in terms of the lack of infrastructure. certainly very supportive of this motion. I think it's a great start, but I also wanted to say that very much welcome, I'm sure residents welcome all the rest of the work that officers are doing with the community down there, going through the list of priorities, I suppose, because so many of them perhaps don't even need a lot of spending, but certainly need consideration and work, especially the safety considerations, you know, the lack of places to cross that are safe, the, you know, cars that, anyway, everyone knows, is aware of them. So I welcome the work that the officers are doing in that regard. And I think this is a, you know, a good step forward in necessary direction, especially when you look at the, you know, the projected growth in that whole area, not just the immediate precinct, but around it. A lot of the expected growth for our city is going to be concentrated in that quarter. So all the more important that we get ahead of it, and hopefully with the support of the state government in terms of key measures around Hopkins Road and so forth.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Holgate. Any councillor speak for the motion? Councillor Carter?
Yeah, just to add, having been around for the entirety of this process, and I was a very nervous new mayor when I had to go up against the Minister for Planning and Matthew Guy on 7:30 report. I was in my late 20s, had only just been elected, but what we knew at that time was that this was one of the worst examples of planning that we'd ever seen. It was the first time that we'd actually sat down to try to articulate the after-build costs that this would be incurred by council to try and retrofit poor development. And that's what we see today. Matthew Guy, at the time, there was an independent planning panel to assess this. They raised the same concerns. He voted against the recommendation of the independent planning panel and against council's advocacy and obviously, you know, us articulating that this would result in very poor amenity. And I think one of the challenges now is investments like this will be painful for residents whilst we're constructing the road. It's going to be really difficult. There will be some things that we can't retrofit and fix. That's how poorly the planning is. And I know it has been raised, it was raised when we had the half-day kind of workshop in September last year, that, you know, there are some areas where ideally you'd have crossovers or footpaths. There's just no scope to incorporate them in some areas, but we will do, and it's quite unfair if you think about it, ratepayers, and this is what we raised at the time. Good planning wouldn't have required so many of these after development fixes. And because it is a development zone over a, you know, protracted period of time, we're going to keep coming up against, because it's approved development, those challenges. And we knew that at the time. That's why we have to remain so vigilant when the state comes in to look at doing development for council, because we have the local knowledge. We know, you know, traffic flows and things like that. So it's going to continue to be a tough road, but I'd like to say that you've got all the councillors in the room that are committed to getting the very best outcome, and we'll stage that. You know, it'll have to be staged over time. You know, Lilardia Park getting back up so that there's a little pocket park because there's high dog ownership down there. And I know, having parked at the Heavenly Queen Temple for meetings at Joseph Road a few times with the mud and jumping out of high heels into mud pits wasn't exactly fun. And so I'm sure we'll make good friends of the Heavenly Queen Temple as well, because there's a lot of people that choose to walk their dogs down that path. So this is a first step. One of the things I'd like to acknowledge, there was supposed to be a page uploaded on the council website for Joseph's Road residents last November when I finished my term as mayor. I understand that that wasn't done and wasn't updated. I'm just looking to officers, but just to say that I feel like the communication, there's been a lot of work going on in the background, but that we can always improve in how we communicate to residents on the timeline, what we can do, what we can't do, and when we can get it done. But I think you have a broad-ranging commitment here from councillors that we do feel your pain, we understand, and we will do what we can. I commend the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. Any other speaker? Councillor Tran?
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that most of the councillors have said the most substantial parts of it, the most key bits, but I might go to mainly the financials and more so the timeline of all this. It's well aware made to the community that the project is costing council and developers $6.2 million just to run this project. However, I will note at the upper end of the tender which we ran, it equated to approximately $22 million for council to potentially run this project. That is the cost which, as Councillor Carter alluded to, we have incurred as a result of an original sin, as Councillor Kerr mentioned. We as councillors all note, especially the newer ones, despite the fact that we had nothing to do with the prior project, and indeed Councillor Carter did everything in her capacity to advocate against this project, we are all here to amend this, to fix this issue. The costs of which council will bear, but the costs of which we should not have had to bear in the first place, and ratepayers as a subsequent point. In terms of the timeline for the project, we know that it's all about operating as fast and efficiently as possible. But to be really candid with everyone, the project, the contract end date for the project is 10 March 2025. That's the latest which we expect the project to run for, and that's when this project should be concluded by. Obviously, that's subject to quite a few things, as well as and I will say the costing is also subject to quite a few things along the way, whether it's an increase in the cost of the build or whether it's a delay in resources. That doesn't mean council is going to stop the project. That doesn't mean that we will delay the project. We'll just keep rolling through the punches, but there may be variations to the contract as we go. It's just the nature of the beast that we're currently living in terms of the socio-economical status. In terms of the developer contribution, which Councillor Crawford alluded to give a rough estimate, it's around 88%, whereas council's margins are 12%. That is council's best efforts to try and reduce the costs for council and subsequently reduce the costs on ratepayers. We know that one of the many things that ratepayers often say is council's spending too much on many projects, and we're doing our best to keep our costs low whilst also ensuring that we're effective in everything that we do. That is a part of council's approach to all of these major projects which are required to come before councils in the first place. I will note that councillors have been down to visit the residents of the Joseph Road Precinct. But that does not take away from the fact that councillors are also very well aware that there has been such a significant delay and indeed a massive impact on the residents that live there. I have friends, or I have a single friend who lives in the apartment on that precinct. So I do understand the difficulties of that area, especially considering the fact that my particular friend rides their bike. It is not the standard which not only council expects but residents would expect. It is a home first and foremost. It is a poor development second. But unfortunately, the poor development is what is affecting your homes. It's not fit for you. We want to make this as livable, as enjoyable as possible. We want residents to stay. We want them to enjoy Footscray, to visit the Footscray Community Arts Centre that's nearby. And we want kids to be able to go from St. Monica's all the way back to home. To which, again, many of my friends' children go to that particular school. So we do understand the struggle. And as Councillor Carter has said, we will continue to strive to fix these issues that, unfortunately, Mr. Guy at the time thought was a great move. I commend the motion, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Trent.
Nice.
Any other speaker for the motion? I would like to say a few words. We have been working together with the local MP as well. Mrs. Katie Ho went there with me, and local ward councillor, Councillor Clark, and I think the former mayor also been there, and I have seen that Councillor Hopkins and Councillor Crawford been there as well. So we know and we understand now. We can show now that we are listening to you, and we try to try to, do as best as we could. You heard other councillors all behind you and support you. So be patient and come to us if you have any concern. Yeah, thank you. Now, are there any speakers against for the motion? I will put the motion into the vote. Are those in favor? Okay, are those against? I put the motion into, I declare the motion is carried. Now, agenda item 9.7, governance report, December 2023. Could I call for the councillor to move a motion in regard to agenda item 9.7? Councillor Carter.
As per the officer recommendation, that council notes the governance report containing the record of informal meetings of councillors for December 2023, which will be made available on council's website for the term of the current council.
Thank you, councillor. Could I of course call a councillor to second the motion? Councillor Clark. Are there any questions or point of clarification? Okay, would the mover would like to speak to the motion?
Formally moved.
Okay, would the second would like to speak for the motion?
Formally second.
Thank you, councillor. Any other speaker for the motion? Any other speak for against the motion? Now I put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Okay. Thank you. All those against? I declare the motion is carried. Note of motion, agenda 10.1, note of motion 2024/01, speed limit on Hopkins Street. Footscray, could I call Councillor Michael Clark to move a motion in regard to agenda 10.1?
Yeah, thanks, Your
Councillor.
Worship. Councillors, I move that Council 1 notes that the Mayor wrote to the Minister of Roads and Road Safety on 23 January 2024 advocating for a reduction of the current speed limit of 60 kilometres per hour on Hopkins Street, Footscray, between Moore Street and Hopkins Bridge over the Maribyrnong that connects Dynon Road in West Melbourne. 2, acknowledges that in response to the Mayor's letter to the Minister for Roads and Road Safety, the Minister has asked the appropriate department to meet the Council officers to identify opportunities to address safety concerns within the precinct, and 3, requests the Chief Executive Officer provide a report to the April 2024 Council meeting outlining the actions to be taken to address the safety concerns within the precinct. Councillors, I commend the motion to you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Could I call for Councillor to second the motion? Councillor Crawford. Are there any questions upon a clarification, Councillor? Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, just briefly. Thanks, Your Worship. Councillors, I don't mind saying that this motion has been brought to the chamber very much in response to the concerns as raised by the Joseph's Road Action Group. There are very clear concerns about the safety of trying to cross Hopkins Street. On a visit to the precinct, I watched people run the gauntlet, and it wasn't a case of if someone was going to be struck by a car, it was again when this was going to occur. Quite simply, traffic in the precinct is far too fast. It is a major residential precinct now. It was industrial, and I think we need to be clear. What it was historically is not what it is today. The expectations of the community are very clear that there needs to be a traffic calming occur. If this doesn't occur, not a problem. There will be more fatalities, no doubt. We've seen 1 on Hopkins Street, we've seen 2 on Whitehall Street. Sadly, I witnessed 2 of the fatalities that occurred on Whitehall Street. We can't afford this to happen. The only way we can reasonably expect change to occur is by reducing the speed limit. I want to acknowledge the Minister for Roads and Road Safety, Minister Horn, Melissa Horn, for her very timely response to the Mayor's letter to the Minister in late January. And I'd like to thank the Mayor on behalf of the residents and community of Joseph's Road for her timely efforts in relation to attending to this matter. I do make the point, councillors, and I think as Councillor Carter had highlighted, there was supposed to be a web page up. Communications with the local community, particularly this local community, needs to be significantly more robust than what it has been. This council draws a line in the sand, councillors. What happened yesterday, but we go forward and we have a commitment to an ongoing communications process with our community in Joseph's Road and in fact all communities. But given that we have an inclemency in Joseph's Road today as it stands, we commit to talking to you on an ongoing basis. Whether it's through electronic media, such as a web page, or I think more importantly, much more importantly, face to face. We're down there and we will discuss one-to-one or one to a group what the community's issues and concerns are. What you're seeing here this evening, councillors, is not one but two salvos of response to the needs of the Joseph's Road community. It starts now in a more robust form. It will not end quickly. We have a lot of work to do in this precinct, and I believe it's this council's commitment to make sure that that work is done. Councillors, I commend the motion to you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Would a second would like to speak to the motion?
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Clark, for bringing this notice of motion to us. Thank you to the residents for bringing this issue up with councillors. And thank you to the Mayor and the CEO for acting so swiftly in writing to the Minister. I completely agree that we need to do everything we can to protect our vulnerable road users, so pedestrians, cyclists. We need to make sure that people aren't dying on our streets. Fatalities on our roads, it's just not acceptable. So we need to do everything we can to make sure it doesn't happen. If it's a case of motorists losing a few seconds of their lives because they have to go a few kilometres slower, then so be it. It's worth it a millionfold if it saves one life, let alone, multiple lives. I'm 100% in support of this motion, and I hope that we continue on this journey towards making our roads safer, because at the moment they're still not safe enough.
Good on you, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Crawford. Are there any speaker for the motion? Councillor Hawke.
I think the key substantive points have been made. Just to add, I suppose, somewhat of colour to it. The other day I happened to stand at the level 4 running track, which is an impressive running track, incidentally. And I would challenge anyone to stand there and watch the traffic, especially the downhill traffic on Hopkins Road. It's possibly not as bad uphill, although I believe the death occurred on the uphill side, but the recent death. But the downhill run from Moore Street, basically, is just, it's frightening to look at. And I, in talking to a couple of residents, a few that are commuters into the city, pointed out the sort of, I suppose, ironic contrast with Arden Street, because that's an often taken route. I know I take it myself cycling into town. That there, in anticipation of a development, you've had traffic calming, so you've got 40 all the way down what to a lot of residents from our part of town probably looks like an abandoned road, because it doesn't have anywhere near the traffic, Arden Street, in that stretch where the North Melbourne Club is, that we have on Hopkins Street. But you a 10-minute cycle ride and you're in a traffic calmed area, in a very much wider road, incidentally, with cycling lanes, or at least drawn ones, and then you come back to Hopkins Street, which is just, a contrast. So, commend Councillor Clark for moving this motion, and everyone involved, officers, in continuing with the advocacy required to do this as promptly as possible would be fantastic.
Thank you. Any other speaker for the motion? Okay. Any other speaker again for the motion? I put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? So I declare the motion is carried. Agenda item 10.2, not to the motion 2024/02 treaty with First Nation people. I call for the Councillor Michael Clark to move the motion in regard to agenda item 10.2.
Thanks, Your
Councillor
Worship.
Clark.
Councillors, I'd move that Council 1 reaffirms its support for the Uluru Statement from the Heart as part of Council's ongoing commitment to reconciliation. 2, notes that residents of the City of Maribyrnong voted in support of the Voice to Parliament referendum 2023. 3, encourages all Maribyrnong residents to continue to support First Nations peoples. 4, continues to support and endorse the Victorian State Government's efforts to achieve a treaty with First Nations people of Victoria. 5, firmly asserts the need for a multi-partisan approach for the Victorian State Government treaty negotiations and calls on the Victorian Liberal and National parties to reconsider withdrawing support for a Victorian treaty process. 6, through the office of the Mayor, write to the leaders of the Liberal and National parties of Victoria, urging all stakeholders to robustly support the ambitious initiatives of the Victorian State Government in forging a treaty with First Nations people of Victoria. And 7, submits a motion to the May 2024 Municipal Associations of Victoria, the MAV, State Council, calling on all levels of government to support the treaty process. Councillors, I commend the motion to you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Could I call for the Councillor to second the motion? Councillor Crawford.
Sorry, I thought that Councillor Thomas seconded it.
Did I say that? I didn't. Did you support?
Now you know how I feel, Councillor Crawford.
Sorry.
Pass the
Close but no cigar.
Councillor Thomas. Okay. All right. Any question upon a clarification? I would like to, would you move it, would like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thanks, Your Worship. Before I do, can I just have Council recognise that we have in the gallery Mr. Clint Lingard. He's a First Nations man from Queensland originally. And I do note, Your Worship, councillors, that he is a First Nations, in fact, solicitor, and I believe celebrating 20 years at the bar. It's a great effort. And so pleased, Mr. Lingard, that you've elected to call the state of Victoria and the city of Maribyrnong home. It's great to see such a fantastic representative of the First Nations people here amongst us this evening. Councillors, the success of treaty, the success of recognising the dispossession and the hurt felt by our First Nations people within 200 years of colonial settlement needs to be redressed. The only way to redress this is like in the nation of New Zealand with their Treaty of Waitangi, a treaty with our First Nations people. Our Prime Minister acknowledges that treaty is not something to be undertaken directly with the federal government, but is the province of the state governments of this nation, of the Commonwealth of Australia. For many years, the state of Victoria, a great state, I thought an enlightened state, had the multi-partisan support of all parties for a treaty to occur. And what have we seen, councillors? The ignominious, wholesale attempt to exploit the outcome of the voice as a means of gaining political advantage. This is some of the most cynical behaviour I think I have ever seen in my life, not just as a councillor, but as someone who has been watching politics since I was a boy. I am intrigued that the developments that have taken place are prepared or are so ably jettisoned for political advantage. What about the people? And this is what the question is about with treaty. What about recognising the hurt that had been foisted on our First Nations people? How many had been subject to the cruelty of colonialism? The great thing about this country, councillors, is the fact that we've recognised the ills of our past. I believe that in many ways the apology that occurred on the 13th of February 80, I can't think, 93.
2008.
Ah,
Kevin Rowe.
thank you kindly. 2008, goodness. But at the time, Prime Minister Rudd was trying to redress so many ills. And in trying to apologise for the dispossession of the stolen generations, black history and white history was becoming one history. There was no question about what had taken place. But in this cynical move by the coalition, the state coalition, to no longer support treaty, we see a regression to a time that was unfavourable to our First Nations brothers and sisters. This needs to be redressed. It's okay for the coalition to say they were wrong. I can only hope that in our application to the coalition that they see the error of their ways. Councillors, I commend the motion to you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Would the seconder would like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Councillor Clark, for bringing the motion and for allowing me to have some input into enhancing it to sort of include the recognition, I guess, of the way that our community supported the voice, which was really impressive on one of a very few communities that voted yes in favour of the Voice to Parliament referendum. Council has been, the treaty process in Victoria I think is really sound. Council's been sort of had a presentation from a number of people who are organising the committee, the treaty process, and who do community engagement around that. And I also note that Council has supported sort of that spreading the word, I guess, by having a couple of information sessions at Footscray Library, I think this year and last year. So just continuing that education process, I guess, that Council committed to in 2020, I think, for helping our community and supporting our community to become not just informed but also engaged and active around supporting processes that work to improve the lives of our First Nations people. So yes, I'm really pleased to support this motion because I think there's been perhaps an error of judgment by some of our political colleagues in state parliament, and I'm really hoping that they'll come to their senses and change their minds. So yeah, fully support the motion. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any speakers for the motion? Councillor Crawford.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with previous speakers. I guess for me, I don't need the political parties to admit they were wrong. I just want them to move forward in the right direction. So fully support the motion. Let's let them save face and just move forward with us rather than having to acknowledge any wrongdoing. But minor detail. I guess for me, the most important thing, and that this is showing me, is that we really need to take the community along with us on this journey. And obviously in Maribyrnong, that's our community. At a state level, it's the whole state of Victoria. So I'm really proud that the Voice referendum was supported in Maribyrnong, and hopeful that that's supportive, indicative of the work we've been doing to try to educate the community and let people know, what a voice means, what a treaty means. Because I think for me, a large part of the no vote for the voice was people just not really understanding, being a bit fearful of what that actually means. So I think for the treaty, it's really important that we continue to educate our community, and obviously state government keeps educating people of Victoria and taking the people on that journey and understanding it, so there's not the fear, because it can be quite a complex process. We're not entirely sure what the outcome's going to be, so there's going to be a lot of hesitation from a lot of people out there, and it's obviously unfortunate when political parties try to capitalise on people's fear. So, yeah, let's do our best to take people on the journey, make them realise that this is something that should have happened in 1788, but it's never too late. Let's make it happen in 2024 and following years. So, yeah, I think it's a good motion, and I hope that we can all Victorians can work together to move towards treaty. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crawford. Any other speaker for the motion? Councillor Holgaker.
Just briefly, I'd like to first of all, thank Councillor Clark for bringing this motion. I think, for me, more than anything else, it underscores the authenticity of this council's support for First Nations justice. I think it's particularly important, a motion in the context of what happened around the voice referendum. The fact, as other councillors have pointed out, that we were among them, a minority of communities that supported the voice. It's also important to note in that we were also, from what I understand, among an even smaller minority of councils who openly supported the voice by motion. And I think that says a few things, including it says a lot about the importance of leadership at a local government level, but also, of course, is a tribute to our community in and of themselves in terms of their awareness of the issues. And I think this motion does very well in sort of not closing the circle, so to speak, but at least sort of marking that whole process, because otherwise I think we would feel, and certainly communities would feel, as if, well, what happened after that? There's a lot of hurt, but what happened? We passed motions, our community voted for the voice. I think this is an important motion, if you like, in more general language, in the healing process. So yeah, just emphasise thanking Councillor Clark for bringing this motion to us.
Thank you, Councillor Holgaker. Any other speaker for the motion? Councillor Carter?
I promise I will keep it quick, but just to say, and going to Councillor Hopkins' point, there is a legitimacy because our community did vote yes for the voice, and we can't, as devastated as we are by the result, we can't be complacent. We can't let that commitment waver. We need to remain vigilant. And the only point that I do differ from Councillor Crawford in giving the parties the possibility of saving face and, politely seeing the error of their ways. I'm just going to say this is disgraceful politicking by the Liberal and Nationals parties. It's grubby politics on an issue that carries with it so much hurt and so much trauma. To politicise something like that off the back of a failed referendum is it's absolutely shameful. My very good friend, Natalie Hutchins, is the Minister for Treaty and First Peoples. I'd suggest, and it doesn't need to be part of the motion, but that we send a copy of the letter that we send to the Liberals and Nationals parties to her office, just to let her know that there are councils out there that support the government with the other party's support, like the Greens' approach to treaty. We had a briefing. Great progress is being made. It's complex. I needed the briefing to understand the intricacies and kind of the parameters and even how the decision making. There's a lot of conversation that needs to occur. But Victoria is leading on this work, and it's commendable work. So I'd suggest that we let the Minister know as well, as a community that voted yes for the voice, that we stand in their corner and as advocates for continued treaty. So I do commend the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Carter, and your suggestion as well. So I think the CEO will do that to the Minister Hutton. Okay. Any other speaker for the motion? Now, are there any guest speaker against for the motion? I would like to put the motion into the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare the motion is carried. Agenda item 10.3, not a motion 2024/03 Activity Centre Amenity. I call for the Councillor Carter to move the motion in regard to agenda 10.3.
Thank you
Councillor
very
Carter.
much. The motion is that Council 1 requests the Chief Executive Officer to investigate the current policy framework in relation to public amenity and design of commercial frontages within the activity centres and provide a report back to Council. 2, cease any further compliance or enforcement activities in respect of roller doors and shutters until this report is prepared and considered by Council. 3, request the Chief Executive Officer to investigate opportunities to provide financial support to businesses within activity centres to undertake improvement to their commercial street frontage and provide a report back to Council.
Thank you, Councillor. Now I call for the Councillor to second the motion. Councillor Tran? Are there any speaker, any question upon the clarification, Councillor? With the mood, I would like to speak to the motion.
Yes, it's a very broad motion, but for good reason. So there's 2 parts to this. Firstly, and I don't want to be seen to be having a go to our officers who are implementing this policy, it's just that the aspiration of council and sometimes the execution of things, there can be instances where the two do not marry. And I give you an example of Footscray trader that reached out to me really quite concerned because they had the wrong roller door. It was not compliant with what we want to see in commercial frontages within the activity centres. This trader was given 60 days to take down his non-compliant roller door and to either apply for a permit to have a new one. Quotes were $6,000 in excess to come up with that kind of money in 2 months, or to not have a roller door on his premises. And he has very valuable, and we know traders at the moment, you know, perceptions of antisocial behaviour are on the rise, and there's a sense of vulnerability. And I really felt for this trader, and there are more like him. Now, his roller door isn't compliant, but guess what? He took over the business and it had the roller door on it. You wouldn't know. But then to have 60 days to either, in his view, leave his business very vulnerable, or to fine $6,000. I don't know about everyone around this table, but if you had 60 days to fine $6,000 for an additional business cost, that puts you in a bit of a bind. So what I'm suggesting is, and it's been a while, we've done an audit looking to, and this is where I don't want it to be seen as a, you know, bashing officers just doing their job, but the enforcement side of it I find overly punitive. I don't see a great deal of humanity in that response, but they are executing our plan, which is we want to see a Footscray streetscape at night that doesn't have, you know, shutters, the complete shutters that are just blocking out, because it does give a sense of there's no passive surveillance. It makes it look very blocked off and guarded, and it's not a great look to have everything boarded up at night. The compliance structures actually are more a great system, and they provide a better amenity. What I'm saying, councillors, is it's been some time since we've implemented this, and there's been a lot of changeover, particularly after COVID, of business owners. And I think we can do better to communicate through our business concierge the requirements of policies for things like this and other amenity issues in Footscray. I also think it was really successful years ago. We were working with Footscray CBD traders to kind of meet some of the costs. It was a proposal, like a fund we had available for traders that wanted to give their shop a new coat of paint. It's all about improving the amenity and the look and the feel and vibrancy of Footscray, which could use a little bit of love. So I think in keeping this motion general, what I'm really hoping, and in discussion with the executive team, is that we get something back that's a bit of a refresh, where we can look at working collaboratively with traders on that education piece, so that we don't have that heavy-handed approach, and really look at what can we do into the future, whether it's, you know, a grants period staged over a few years to work with traders on things like amenity of roller doors, shop fronts with regard to painting and graffiti removal. What more can we be doing to collaborate with traders to get a better streetscape and a better outcome, and not so punitive, because $6,000. And then there's also, I mean, for traders too, they don't want to be seen as troublemakers. They don't want to get on the wrong side of local laws. It's just, it left a bit of a sour taste in my mouth that was their experience of council as a new business about to, you know, just celebrate 1 year operating in Footscray. So I hope you can support this motion, and I'm really confident that with a review of the policy framework, we might get something even more robust to contribute to the amenity look and appearance of the streetscape in Footscray.
Who is second? I would like to speak to the motion.
I need to commend the motion, Mayor, and hopefully that Councillor Carter's motion prompts any other policies which council might have, which may affect traders in what can be deemed as quite an unfair manner, to be reviewed and potentially brought to council for review as well, considering, as Councillor Carter did say, a new business owner is sort of being pushed away, not by any virtue of their wrongdoing, but rather because of council's policies. It's no knock on council policies, nor on council staff or council directors, but rather might just be time for review.
Okay, thank you. I need a speaker for the motion. I need a speaker against for the motion. Would I put the motion to the vote? All those in favour? All those against? I declare the motion is carried. Now, councillor question time. Now we move to the councillor question time. The question asked by councillor must be in accordance with the council governance rule. Is there any councillor question time? No. Okay. There is no question. I declare the question time is closed. Urgent business. Any urgent business, councillors? No? Okay. This here, no. There's no councillor business? No? Okay. No confidential business either? No, before I declare the meeting closed, I would like to, on behalf of the councillor, and all the staff members, that we would like to send our condolence to two great members in our community has passed away recently, which is, we announced that before, that Mr. Joanne Coxett and also Francine Richard, and we should send condolence to the families. So, yeah, thank you. Okay, we declare the meeting is 8:51, close at 8:51. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, people there.